Hello and welcome to Marketing Global Edition with me, Jasmine Montgomery.
And as always with me, Piers, Guilar. So what are we talking about today, Jasmine?
Well, something that's been in the news this week has been the video that Trump posted on Truth Social, showing him and Elon Musk building a Riviera out of the detritus of Gaza.
Yeah, that was absolutely nuts, wasn't it? But I don't think you wanted to be talking about Trump yet again, do you? I think that might be a dangerous alley to be going down.
Yes, probably. So not so much Trump, but real estate brands. Brands that are, in fact, already in the business of building golden cities out of the desert, because there are plenty of people doing that already. So I think it's a fascinating time for real estate globally, aside from Trump.
I think you're referring to NEOM and all the sort of mega projects going on in Saudi. Is that correct? I mean,
yes.
Yeah, I thought you might be. By the way, have you seen all the stadiums they're building for the World Cup? It's amazing. They look like something out of Blade Runner or The Matrix.
Yeah, it's just totally incredible. I mean, some of these projects are just jaw-dropping. There's a special name for them. They're called Giga projects. But I've always found it very curious how little we know about the brands behind these Giga projects.
Exactly. So let's talk about those jaw-dropping projects and then we'll talk about the brands behind them.
Okay, so imagine this. It's 2060. You are waking up in a breathtaking city stretching 170 kilometers across the Saudi desert. An architectural marvel where nature, technology, and luxury coexist. Outside your zero-carbon home, there are vertical farms providing fresh organic food. Your personal AI-powered robot maid prepares your morning coffee. The skyline is reflected in a giant artificial moon. I'm mixing my times of day, but you'll forgive me. And this all casts a gentle glow over a world where flying taxis whisk you effortlessly to work and drones drop off your packages, or you can just stroll to work along one of the lush climate-controlled walkways. And here, everything you need is a 5-minute walk or a frictionless train ride away.
It sounds like such a bunch of science fiction, but I happen to know what you're talking about. It is the line, which is due to open in 2030, although the reality is it may take a lot longer than that, actually, I think. But the plan is amazing, right? So, I mean, you've captured quite a lot of it there. But for me, the stick-out points are it's 105 miles long, but little more than 650 foot wide. There's no cars, there's no roads. It's all automated transport, high-speed rail. It runs entirely on renewable energy. You can walk anywhere to get anything you want within 5 minutes. It's a bit like where I live. The ideal climate all year round, even though you are in Saudi.
Which is not like where you live, by the way, in England.
Guess how many people are going to be in it?
I mean,
9 million. 9 million. And they've got access to things like sports stadium, a yacht marina, as you do, flying taxis, etc. But we'll see. We will see.
It's just incredible. And the company behind the line is NEOM. It's a Saudi Arabian giga project backed by Public Investment Fund, so Saudi Arabia Sovereign Wealth Fund. And they're doing NEOM and another project, the Red Sea development. And they're both, a key part of Mohammed bin Salman's Vision 2030, the Crown Prince bin Salman's strategic plan to diversify the Saudi economy beyond oil. And it's hard to know, the cost of all Saudi's kind of real estate projects, but the numbers are projected to run into hundreds of billions, possibly a couple of trillion dollars.
Yeah, it's mind-blowing, fascinating stuff, isn't it? I mean, the Middle East has been an amazing place for seeing incredible buildings, pop up recently. But other places too are building amazing destinations, cities, towns, mega structures, and they're all making waves. Have you heard of Woven City in Japan? And the new administrative capital of Egypt? Or Tattoo in Kenya, even.
All really fascinating. Woven Cities, it's so interesting because I think it's Toyota that's behind it. But one that I really like is actually a project in Vietnam where there's a real estate developer called Vin Homes who has unveiled its groundbreaking vision for something called Ocean City, which aspires to be a destination city of healing. So attracting, visitors, business people, etc., tourists who are looking for kind of an experience that nurtures mind, body, and spirit. So it's this massive, 1,200 acre mega complex, but it's all about being a wellness city designed to revolutionize urban living. So it's got kind of, in addition to things like parks and lakes and pools, it's got state-of-the-art healthcare facilities, but also really interesting kind of educational options. So they've done deals with, and this is a trend we're seeing in a lot of real estate developments, they've done deals with the likes of Brighton College, but also a partnership with Cornell University. So they're offering kind of really high caliber, education programs within this whole sort of healthcare promise.
Yeah, it's really interesting to see these sort of big real estate companies. They're not just building buildings anymore, they're creating proper communities, including education, of course. So, there are so many we could talk about. You picked up Toyota's Woven City in Japan, but there's Marina Sands Bay, building of the fourth tower, Jeddah Tower, rumoured to become, hopefully, the tallest building in the world, because we don't have a tall enough building at the moment, do we? As I joke. But, anyway, over to you. What do you think?
I think the really crazy thing is that we touched on at the beginning is how little is known about the real estate brands behind these mega projects. So if you think about a mega project that most people have heard of, the Palm Dubai, it's been around a long time. How many of our listeners around the world know the name of the company that built that? Obviously, if you live in Dubai, you know it. It's 𝐻𝐿𝐻𝐿. But I bet a lot of people have been there on holiday and stayed at the Atlantis or, visited it and couldn't tell you the name and don't know anything about 𝐻𝐿𝐻𝐿.
I think that's a really good point. I think this is incredible, actually. There are brands that are shaping our future and how we're going to live over the next 25 to 50 years. Huge brands, huge revenues, and people just don't know who they are.
I mean, huge revenues and no awareness. So, have you ever heard of, because I never had, companies like Proglosis? They're responsible for building a Cambridge biomedical campus and they're worth something like $112 billion. But they don't trip off my tongue.
We'll talk about that name another time. Good God. Anyway, another one is Equinax, another company many outside the property industry wouldn't have heard of. They're worth 90 billion. They've also done some really incredible stuff. They've just put a 1 billion into create a new AI-focused data center in Saudi. But I doubt anyone's really heard of them, to be honest, unless they've got an interest in that sector.
It's actually interesting. Data centers are actually a huge and kind of invisible part of the real estate development area. And I think some of these really super specific projects are kind of very niche. And, but I think if you look at what's being built, I think people I would expect that people would want to know more about the companies behind them.
Yeah, I get that. But for the people who are listening who aren't immersed in real estate, we are, to be honest, we do have some real estate brands that we work with. There are some amazing projects on the horizon, but what are they? We've talked about NEOM, right? But have you heard about the Red Sea? I think you might have mentioned it a moment ago, but the Red Sea resort plans, they're all underway. Yes. And they're going to have 8,000 hotel rooms, a new airport, and I love this idea. And the airport transports your luggage straight to your hotel room. I'd love that, actually. But anyway, it might be a bit more beyond our meagre means.
There's an incredible hotel that they're building within that called the Desert Rock Hotel that's opening this year. And all the villas look sort of like something out of Dune, the movie. And unfortunately, they start at over £3,000 a night entry price, but they look absolutely incredible. I think we need a little trip there for a recce.
Wow. There's also unofficially the world's tallest building in the world coming again. Jeddah Tower is supposedly going to be over 1,000 metres and it's going to be taller than the Burj Kalifa.
Although rumour has it may not actually overtake the Burj in the end. But, I think that the era of aiming for the tallest, maybe this is wishful thinking, but I think the era of aiming for the tallest building, may be over and may be replaced by something a little bit more interesting.
But why go for the second tallest building? If you're going to do it, do the tallest, right? If you're going to go that big, if you're going to be slightly smaller.
Rather male perspective, if I may say so, Piers.
Well, maybe, yeah. Anyway, in many ways, the more impressive and beneficial real estate projects going on are these smart cities that are being built all over the world. The way AI Internet of Things, tech, and things like smart powered lights are being used could really change what it means to live in a city. It's going to be,
Yeah, I mean, I
it's
think
just
when
the
you
world
look,
is changing.
yeah, and when you look at these cities of the future, there's the real potential to like completely redefine what it means to live in a city.
Yeah. I think it's really interesting in this space, but from a branding point of view, is the investment that the real estate companies are pouring into their branding. Because what they're really doing is they're pouring it into their individual developments because they want to sell stuff, yeah. But there's a lack of investment in these corporate brands. There really is.
Yeah, but I guess, does the average punter, as we were saying, does the average punter care about the master brand behind the developments?
I think they really should, right? They really should. Real estate, it's the single largest branded purchase now any of us make in our lives. Used to be like cars, watches, jewelry, but real estate has become the ultimate luxury and the ultimate luxury brands that we're buying into.
That is true. And I think especially if you're buying off plan, so you're putting down millions, I mean, not me or you, but like rich people are putting down millions of dollars before a villa or apartment or office has even been built. You really have to trust the developer.
Yeah, and we see examples of that, don't we? Our clients, we've got Emaar and we have Eagle Hills. And when they launch a new development, we do launch campaigns and developments. And those developments sell out in a matter of hours.
Is that because of the brilliance of our campaigns, Piers?
I'd like to say so. But honestly, it's the brilliance of what they do. It's their reputations as companies, as brands, right? So just one example, Emaar, all across all of their properties, all of their estates and everything, they always cut the grass everywhere 5 a.m. onwards, and they always cut it to the same exact height. Mm-hmm. It's got that real perfection. It's a bit like McLaren in automotive or something. It's incredible what they do.
The standards of service and sort of upkeep, and you buy into that as well as the bricks and mortar. That they're going to really look after you. Yeah, I think that's true. I mean, I think that's true. So, I think that what's so interesting though is that the companies, there are companies that invest in their brands, like some of them really do. But more generally across the sector, we do see, from what we see of not of our clients, but of a lot of the other real estate brands out there, this really sort of asymmetrical investment in their portfolios with so much emphasis on the awareness of the latest developments. So often you log onto the homepage of a real estate developer and all you see is their latest upcoming build or development, nothing about them as a business generally.
Always. But so what do you think they should be showing?
Their point of view on the world, their differentiation, their greatest hits from the past, their perspective on what the world is going to look like in the future. After all, they're the ones building that future.
Yeah, they really are. And in some cases, they're going to determine not just our home culture, but our work culture and things like healthcare and education for our kids. It's everything.
I'd really like to see them start to set themselves apart from the competition through their philosophy. At the moment they all talk about kind of sustainability, community and things like that, but I'd like to see some really start to own a point of view. And I think there is some territory up for grabs.
Oh yeah, like what?
Well, things like, health and wellness. Imagine being the real estate developer that promises that your residents will live longer than anywhere else. Or not just that you'll build X number of schools per head count of residents, but that you are investing in building the greatest minds of the next century.
Yeah, it's an interesting trend that our colleague who runs the Middle East for us has mentioned, is the trend towards privacy. People are buying villas that are not overlooked, right? And not in areas, and in areas that are not full of expats, so that, being honest, if you're a Muslim, you don't have to come out of your front door and see Western women in bikinis. It's a really interesting cultural trend.
Yeah, you would hate that, wouldn't you?
Well, I would absolutely hate to see that sort of stuff. It ruined my day.
But I mean, it's an interesting, unique thing that they're kind of carving out for themselves, is that sort of resonance with local culture. And I think one that's totally up for grabs in the Middle East, particularly, is embracing human rights. This will not be popular with everybody, but I think some developers, especially of some of the kind of Giga projects, are getting really bad press for their treatment of expat workers from, South Asia in particular. but also for taking a very hard line in the removal of indigenous groups occupying areas that are up for development. And I know that they'll listen to this and think it's a really Western perspective. But when people start losing their lives, it really turns off, you know, the big famous Western architects who could be part of the projects, the Western investors, the Western buyers. And some of them are paying PR firms millions of dollars in PR when the easier thing to do would be just to pay slightly better work for better working conditions for expat workers in the first place, or pay enough to relocate people that makes it worth their while.
I knew you'd bring that up, but I think we have to tread carefully here.
I know. But like, I want our clients to spend their money wisely. And I think that not being bad in the first place is almost always cheaper than trying to wallpaper over bad practice after the fact. So even if it doesn't appeal to companies on human rights grounds, and they're not bleeding hot liberals like me, it makes better commercial sense. And it would be seen as a differentiator and a sign of strong leadership for the company that really led the way.
All right. What about sustainability? Do you think that's an interesting space?
I think it's a hard one because, I mean, I wish it were, but I think everyone is paying lip service to it. So you have to work really hard to shine through in that space. What do you think?
I think there are some great buildings. The Edge in Amsterdam, One Central Park in Sydney, Shanghai Tower.
Yeah, one I really like is Bosco Verticale, which means, I hope that my pronunciation was right, it means vertical forest. And the designer Stefano Borri describes Bosco Verticale as a house for trees inhabited by humans. And I just love that. So it's two skyscrapers with like completely hanging down the front fascias of these skyscrapers are over 90 different plant species. And I just love that. And I love, you know, like all the hanging gardens that you see in Singapore these days, those vertical gardens across the face of buildings.
I know, it's so green and beautiful.
I love it.
I know. Yeah, look, another great example of a bigger development is Dubai Sustainable City. In 2016, the Sustainable City in Dubai became the region's first practical net zero energy community. 600 homes, rooftop solar panels, they had the urban farm, they had loads of biodome greenhouses that are yielding sort of food that's sold to nearby restaurants like local food, supermarkets and that sort of stuff. Car-free zones, electric buggies, electric vehicles, all that sort of stuff. You know, it was great, but Bloomberg had an article recently about the fact that 7 years and $354 million later, the sustainable city that I'm just talking about has not started a trend anywhere else in the Middle East.
It's so sad, isn't it? I think that's really too bad. And I think there was a period of time kind of before the pandemic when there was this real desire to do kind of world-beating levels of sustainability. And you could really see the direction of travel was into the kind of the green space. But then the pandemic hit and the focus just turned elsewhere. And I think particularly in the Middle East, it's very difficult to sell ideas of, you know, green in a country, in a region whose economics depends on burning fossil fuel oil. So I think that's a tough one.
I know. I think one thing that developers could really think about is how remote working is changing and how people are now, you know, for quite a while, been blending work and home.
Yeah, surely that has got to redefine what homes mean and what offices mean. But I'd even go further than that. Like, I think that, you know, community could be a really big differentiator, not just lip service to it, which is paid, you know, ad nauseum, but with kind of, with everybody doing remote working and kids on screens, I have literally never heard the word community bandied about more than I do at the moment, but actually felt its authentic presence less. You know, I think we're in a time that is kind of fetishizing community, the way that people used to fetishize having a private screening room or, you know, parking for your multiple, you know, sports cars. And I think a developer that really set out to understand and redefine how spaces can facilitate meaningful human interaction in our digital world, and really was an opinion leader about that and invested in, you know, incredible psychological research and was doing groundbreaking development about that, could be really, really interesting.
Well, whatever it is, it seems to be about thought leadership, not just return on investment, that's going to set the real estate brands apart.
Yeah, and I think it probably comes down to inspirational leadership and corporate culture. You know, some of these companies have great cultures, and some do not. As we know from personal experience, having worked with a large company, not a client of ours now, happily, that was positively abusive in its culture.
Yes, but it should be said that all of our real estate clients are lovely.
You just
Really
don't want to
lovely.
say their name. You're just
Lovely, lovely,
desperate for
lovely.
me not to tell everybody who they are. But listen, I'm sure that Trump will be delightful and very human and very kind to everybody when he breaks ground in Gaza for his casinos.
Oh, right. I don't know what to do. Right, you're causing trouble.
Okay, we'd better end there before Piers puts a muzzle on me to stop me from either being indiscreet about our clients or getting us into political hot water.
Okay, see you next week. Bye.
All
everyone.
right, bye for now.
Marketing Global Edition is sponsored by Adsy, the ad generator for small businesses that serves you effective and affordable ads in seconds. And by 7 Brands, the international advertising and branding agency that has worked with clients around the world from Coca-Cola to Facebook.